Veteran Service Report Presentation. Stephen, you just read it. Yeah. Veteran Service Report. Thanks, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back
You
in
guys
session.
can please be quiet or go outside in the hallway. That'd be great if you want to talk.
So, highlights, we kind of captured the Word document this year. We found, again, the VA is kind of on a trend of making a lot of errors. They've hired a lot of people as a result of the PACT Act, and there's several different examples of six-figure awards we've gotten back for some of our veterans just last month for some areas that we caught. The other part that we're getting a little bit more into, we're finding some of our younger veterans coming to us a little bit more frequently, and for them, we're able to engage the veterans rehabilitation education. So if they've got service-connected disabilities that are preventing them from doing work that they have been doing, we're able to get the VA to help pay for, sometimes they're going to college, sometimes they're getting skills training, but to get them back in the workforce here in Sumner County. So we've had a couple of examples of that as well. Just want to highlight those. Any questions?
Good job.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry.
All right, next is discussion on the standard operating procedures on the use, rental, and leasing of county property. Do I have a motion for discussion?
Move.
So moved by
Second.
Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Schoaf. All right, first in the queue. Commissioner Brown.
I'd like to do it too.
Having heard what I've heard, honestly, I feel this needs to be referred back to some ad hoc committee to rework or come up with some better ideas. It just seems like it was done a little too quickly out of the gate. So I would like to make a motion to refer it back to whatever, if you want to make
Well,
an ad hoc committee or.
I don't want to make an ad hoc committee. I'd rather we do it here in legislature.
Okay.
So I wouldn't want to refer it back to anything. You can defer it for a month, but or if that's a motion. But are you making a motion to defer?
I'd like to make a motion to refer it to something.
Well, it'd be deferring it because we're not.
But,
you can make it.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to defer to right now. Is your motion to defer?
I guess, but
Is there a second
how are we
for that?
going to work on that in the meantime?
I'll
Just-
second it, just so we can continue.
All right.
Okay.
Floor is open for discussion.
I'd like to get a queue on
All right. Commissioner Schoaf is not.
Without objection, I'd like to, well, I'll pose my questions to the chair, but I think most of them are answered by the county mayor. How long have nonprofits, any nonprofits, been operating in the Bridal House property?
It's probably 2016,
2017.
2017.
How many agreements have we had in place with existing operations?
None to my knowledge.
We've got one with Douglas Clark House.
So why now?
The position of liability. We're in a position, we have liability with people on the property.
So there were no people on the property with previous events? There was-
We've been lucky that we've not had any accidents or any problems.
I mean, I'm
And
not
so-
saying we shouldn't have a SOP here, I'm just like,
Right.
the timing of this is dubious to me.
Get the key.
Anyway, those
It's
are
just,
questions.
yeah. It has to start somewhere.
They're pretty simple
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
Commissioner Rogers.
So I guess I got, the previous questions brought up just a multitude of thoughts. Are we self-insured?
Mm-hmm.
So being self-insured, we have several thousands of people across this county on county property every day. And now all of a sudden it seems that due to unsettled rest in certain parts of the county, certain people are discriminated against because the letter is dated July the 1st of 2023, calling it a facility use policy. And then the language inside of this is even more discriminatory, if you will, because there's other places across the county that has food trucks able to come in. They're for-profit. There's all kinds of places they're able to park, and there's open flames and fire, and there's fireworks that's been shot across county properties and near county properties, and that's never been an issue.
Guns.
So I do agree with Commissioner Schoaf on this, that this is a rather shot from the hip, but rather blazing shot from the hip. It seems more like a grenade than governance. So I'm in favor of deferring this a month and keeping it in this committee and doing a lot of work, because after all, they're taxpayers too, and it's their property as county property. So that's where I'm at.
Second. Oh, we already had that motion, don't we?
Commissioner Teacher.
So, I've never seen such pain points, just to use property or not to use property. And it breaks my heart, because I feel like there's been so much angst over the community center that we tore down. And I say we because I'm part of the government. And I think that there's so much anger over it about who gets to use what, and it really is, it comes down to it is the people's property. It should not be, I said this a couple commission meetings ago, that it is not like we're Walmart or we're not buying real estate to go, and that's not the way we should be operating anyway. That's not the way the Constitution works. And so I don't like it when we go in there and we start really putting more regulations. And so I know that we have to have some, but in the situation, I mean, we have turkey shoots, we have other things around the county, and we don't have any agreements on those, do we?
Nope.
No.
So if I can go back to the maker, I'd like to make a motion that we just throw this out. Don't even do it.
Second. And I'm gonna get a cue on this.
All right.
And this, I'm gonna tell you why I seconded this. Just occurred to me, we have an injunction on this, there's an active lawsuit, and there's an injunction here, right?
Correct. We
So I
can't do
definitely don't want to be found in contempt of court by making a change to this property while we're in the middle of a lawsuit. So I think this is probably the right call.
My thoughts exactly.
So, any other discussion on that? Mr. Klein, did you have anything to add?
One of the things that confused me is we're talking about outside land and under roof buildings in the same sentence, and that makes no sense to me. I mean, you can have a building in the middle of a park, and it just doesn't make sense to me that you would treat the building the same way as the park. I think it was rushed together, and I don't know that we need to have any kind of regulations at all, but I think it's worthy of discussion. But, you know, this is just one property, and my biggest fear is that this agreement, if we were to adopt it today, would do more damage than it would good. And that is a huge problem to me, so I have to go with the deferment or getting rid of it altogether.
Mr. Sherman?
I would just suggest, I mean, I'd be fine if we just defer until this court case is over. I mean, I wouldn't want to risk any discussion on it until after the court case is
I'll
over.
amend my motion for that.
I'll carry the second.
Well, hold on a second, we got a motion to kill it first.
Well, we do have that.
So you have to dispose of that one first if you want to withdraw your amendment.
I mean, I'm good with I'm good with either one, but
I'll just,
we can always bring it back up if we kill it.
so, I'll just add this. Obviously, from what I'm hearing from citizens, and what I'm hearing from commissioners, unfortunately, it seems obvious that this policy was written and feels like it was targeted towards one group in Cottontown. And that's just how everybody's perceiving it, Mr. Mayor. And so, with that, it's hastily opened up a can of worms, in my opinion, rotten worms, because, you know, several things in here, you know, as far as if we want to talk about a policy of the county on property, that for example, once a group has executed a rental agreement for a particular location, no other renter entity, including those who listed number 3, may preempt usage of the space subject to emergency use. So what that says is, if how they're interpreting it, and they've said it to me, is, let's say you come up a rental agreement we come up with for the bridal house folks, which doesn't exist and never has been. They've been operating there with nothing, and it's worked fine for everybody. That's in jeopardy now because of this. Just understand that. And so therefore, if you do that, then that means no other group could hold, like, for example, a community farmers market, which I went to on Saturday and spent money to support all these vendors. Commissioner Klein was there, and he spent money. We were supporting our local community from honey and candles and meat and goods and wares and pottery. We try to go and try to just support our community and put our dollars where our mouths are. That's effectively could be interpreted as kicking those people and targeting a group. And I'll remind this group, previous county mayor tried that at the Shackle Island Volunteer Fire Department, which is a community center. It's not a fire department. If we want to be honest here, it's a community center building. And tried to kick a political group out just because they didn't like them. Of course, the previous law director said you can't do that. That's discrimination. And so he was targeting them, and the group sent a legal letter to the county, and the county attorneys said, yeah, you're right, and this is ridiculous. And so there's no policy, but going to what Commissioner Teacher said, in 5, the citizens of Sumner County, well, we as government, we don't own anything. They do. The taxpayers own everything, and it's the taxpayers. And you can't tell somebody they can't even peaceably assemble on any property, period, because that's against your First Amendment right, constitutional right, and violation. City of Hendersonville doesn't do that. They have an ordinance if you're going to have a PA system or a bullhorn that you have to get a permit. Otherwise, you can have anything you want to on any public property in Hendersonville without any permission. There's no restrictions. And so for any kind of gathering. But the use of county facilities by profit-making groups for profit-making purposes prohibited is one of the most egregious items in this, because you're telling Girl Scouts who go to Shackle Island Community Center that they can't sell Girl Scout cookies because they're making money. I mean, you have to interpret it as a black and white statement. It's a broad statement. And our goal is not, you can't have Beach Cumberland Presbyterian Church do they're taking shotguns and they're shooting on county property, and they're shooting against a 100-foot mountain to raise funds for their church, to raise funds for the fire department. They do that, but you're telling these groups, and if they're selling meat, some people are making profit there. They have vendors come. They can't do that. So but where's the firearm policy? Where's the fireworks policy? If we want to really go down this road and open up this can, who's going to get screwed as a citizen, in my opinion. And so another thing is, I had a real problem is providing evidence of $1 million in liability for something. If a Girl Scout troop wants to do something and sell something, which is prohibited, you got to have $1 million in liability and have a function. Like say somebody wants to have a cookout and do a fundraiser in Cottontown for the Cottontown Volunteer Fire Department. Well, they can't do that unless they got $1 million in liability insurance. I think that's ridiculous. Personally, I could never agree to something like that. And it's already brought up about the permitting, but I mean, being honest, I see the one thing that's the biggest issue that we have a contention with right now, Mr. Mayor, is item number 1, which says the facility use policy established by the county mayor under general authority granted by TCA 5-6-108, which reads that among other duties is the county mayor's duty to have the care and custody of all the county property, except such as is by law placed in the custody of other officers. Well, TCA 5-7-116 states that each county may lease land or existing buildings owned by the county to any person, corporation, partnership, or association for such consideration and upon such terms as is in the judgment of the governing body, as are in the interest of the county. So I would, obviously we have a disagreement on that, but TCA 55121 directs the county commission to have a control over county property and public buildings. TCA 5-7-106 talks about the county legislative body. Any county buildings are kept in order under the direction of the county legislative body. And this is TCA 5-7-116 basically really puts that authority for this type of policy in the county commission's purview. And like I said it before, whether you agree or not, I understand there's a disagreement, there's part of a judgment, but care and custody, it's the county mayor in our position. I'm a law director and the county staff attorney have agreed with the county commission's position that you're like the property manager. It's the day-to-day care and custody of of facilities. That's, somebody calls you and they have a problem, yes. They're not calling an individual commissioner because we can't act in our individual capacity. It's been very well established in statutes and laws, and you've sent that to us as well. But when it comes down to the ownership, control, and direction of county property, and even doing agreements, it's up to the legislative body. And the reason it is, the state law reads this way, and why I think it's a reasonable interpretation is because it's a greater separation of powers, because it's sure a lot harder to get 24 people or 13 people to agree on something than it is one. So I think that's a really checks and balance that's in our Constitution and well done, or at least in state statutes, of when, because to get 13 to 16 people to agree on something, as you guys know, can be very difficult, even amongst a group of people who generally have the same values and share values. So I just can't interpret it any other way. Obviously, we'd love to work on that, on this with you. I disagree with point one. I don't think you have the authority to do this. But that's hearsay one other, because we could pass a resolution that says the exact opposite, and then we're just in conflict. So it'd be great if we could work together, but the citizens I'm hearing, they feel like it's punitive against them for this one situation. Again, the previous county mayor did that, and it didn't go well. I don't think we should be doing this. I think this creates a lot of problems. Obviously, if there's somebody who wants to, I think it's definitely the purview of the county mayor. Somebody contacts the county mayor about, hey, we'd like to do a festival on this. Yes, that's carrying. I think that makes sense. That's absolutely on the stewardship side of county property on doing, like, somebody wanted to, the TFA said in a public meeting a couple weeks ago that Johnny Garrett was at, state representative came and spoke, and they wanted to do a rally on a Saturday on August the 5th, an unimpeded county government, and here for the red flag session that the governor wants. And they wanted to have food trucks come. So I instantly read this. It's like, my gosh, you can't have food trucks come because they'd be in violation of this county policy. Another thing that really bothered me was that having to have security and the sheriff to even have an event of anything. I don't even see how that's the practicality of that. There's so many things that just, I begin hearing feedback from them. So if you feel that it's necessary for something like that, or if it's the intent of the body to do something like that, we definitely want to, it needs to be worked out in a much better manner, but I just disagree with this. And obviously the citizens have brought forth concerns in how that is. So I just had to get that out there, just listening to what everybody's saying. But Commissioner Show.
Call the question.
Question been called. Do we have a vote? Do we have a second?
Were we voting on?
Well, you have to have a second for call the question.
Yeah, so we have a second call the question.
What am I seconding? Am I
I'm
seconding?
calling the question.
Am I
But what do you, but
is my motion?
in debate,
Yeah.
to vote.
Yeah. Oh, got
And
it.
dispose of the amendments. So he hasn't had a second yet, so we need a second.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Brown. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, call the question. So now we're dealing with, your original, your amendment was to just trash this completely. Does that still stand? And just not do anything. That was your amendment.
That was my amendment.
That was his.
But
I seconded
it was his second.
Okay, my apologies, I got it first. So,
Okay.
all right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
I'll be an aye. Had another train of thought.
yeah,
Sorry.
Commissioner Rogers and I. So basically, we do nothing. That is what we just voted on.
We just need to make sure that this comes off the website, right? 'Cause it's not-
If this is on the website, it needs to be removed.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Moving on to the next item is discussion of the Resource Authority Agreement. Commissioner Brown had asked us to be on here. My question is this something that we could defer? Because I know just to recap a little bit, you had brought this up during legislative budget about the agreement, the $100,000.
Yeah.
We needed 12 months. That was what.
Well, no, this is something that's gonna have to be worked on, okay?
Okay.
Let's go to section 4. Let me read
Make
it.
a motion to.
Motion for discussion is Commissioner Klein. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Jenkins. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Okay, if you go to section 4, on page 4 of the contract, it says the initial term of this agreement shall be for 5 years from the date of this agreement. Started in 2015. So the only time that we're gonna be able to withdraw this $100,000 is in 2025,
So this was executed in 2020, you're saying?
2015.
It's already ran.
Well, that,
5 years ran.
this
Yeah,
agreement's
well,
over.
it's been
Got two
redone.
5-year extensions, right?
Yeah.
So that was voted on?
So,
in that?
yeah, and like I
So-
say, the next time that we'll be able to do that will be 2025.
So, but,
So we've got time,
okay,
so we can be deferred.
so without objection, we're gonna move this to old business.
Okay.
All right. So Resource Authority agreement is gonna go to old business for next month. All right, next item is discussion regarding the TDEC regionalization grant project application.
So moved.
For discussion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Show, second by Commissioner Teacher. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, floor is open.
I'm not getting queue on this.
All right, Commissioner Show. You're welcome.
So, just a couple questions on this one, a couple notes on this one. My position on this is that I'm not necessarily against this. Just want to make sure that what we're doing is building for the growth that's already kind of baked in and not laying foundation and picking winners and losers. And I'm gonna tell you why I'm saying this. There's a business owner in Hendersonville who is trying to put together a new business on the old Bednar's Law location right off Main. And the city of Hendersonville is asking this individual to put up about $2 million to improve sewage and water. He has to take it out of his own accord in order to do that. That's what, I understand why. That's the idea, right? If you want to, at least I was critical of Facebook for getting freebies coming in here while we make sure that this one small business guy, he has to pay $2 million in order to open up a small business. That location had already been used for commercial industry or a commercial entity, but he's trying to do make a venue out of it, and so more people would come in there. So he has to put up the money for it. So it does not seem fair that in the one case we are requiring the individual to put that up to expand his operations. And in this case, I just want to make sure, and I'm not saying this is happening, that we're not basically given another set of individuals, particularly when we're talking about residential developments, free infrastructure investment. Definitely want to take care of the folks that are already there. Definitely want to make sure the folks that are already there have water, have good drinking water. No problem with that. Don't want to pick winners and losers. So that's item number one. Item number two, and I'm just going to throw that out there because I know I differ with a lot of folks here on Exit 8. It will be very interesting to me to see people who vote for help in one city, but that didn't help another city. I can see vote to help both. Vote not to help both. Can be consistent that way. It'll be very interesting to me if we choose to build out infrastructure for one city and not for another. So I'll keep any further comments to myself.
Commissioner Brown?
I'm for this. Water is a necessity of life. The only thing that I don't want to see is mandatory taps. I lived at Neely's Bend and Madison Utility because we never tapped on to the sewage, but they still forced us to pay a minimal fee for sewage, and it was expensive. And that's one thing that I do not see that the citizens should have to do is a mandatory tap fee, which would be a basic thing. Otherwise, yes, they need the water. Everybody doesn't need an exit though.
7% of the people do.
So, but like I say, that's where I stand on that.
Commissioner Teacher?
I have a question. So what is I'm drawing a blank, burden of maintenance of effort, right, for this, and how much is the total, how much money comes from us and how much money comes from grant? Do we know that answer?
We do not. My understanding is, County Mayor might be able to speak to it, or the Mayor of Portland is here, Mr. Callis. I think Mr. Norfleet is here as well. To my understanding, I don't think we're technically putting in any money outside of ARPA at this point. So I might be wrong in that, but there's a minimum $1 million match, and the county passed $10 million of funding 2 years ago as part of the ARPA process. So, you want to answer that question?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, so, of the 10 million, we've already obligated 994,000 and some change towards the phase 1 project that was the non-competitive round with TDEC. As part of this competitive round, the grant would be maximum that you can have apply for is 20 million. Because of our co-funding requirement with Westmoreland and their ability to pay index, our co-funding would be 5%. So we would apply for $19 million in the TDEC ARPA grant, and then $1 million would be the co-funding requirement. And then we're looking at a project cost of about 30 million, so that's where that additional 9 million would come into play. There's also a request on budget tonight to apply for $2.5 million additional dollars that could potentially go towards this application to get us closer to that 30 million.
So how much
maximum
total out
cost.
of pocket?
So,
How much total out of
can
pocket?
I ask this?
Go ahead. Commissioner Rogers.
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to recap. What's the total out of pocket for the county?
Right now, we have obligated 9 million, and it's coming from the ARPA grant dollars.
But we passed the resolution for $10 million, so please.
We've already
so what, the
obligated
990
994,000.
Has already been spent or just
It's
obligated?
been obligated through a grant contract, and those 7 projects are proceeding.
So those are actual projects, not engineering, or engineering and the projects?
Yes,
together?
What's in those projects?
Portland's project for construction only. Portland paid for their engineering separately. Those 3 projects have gone to bid and they're close to being awarded this month. The other 4 projects are through Westmoreland. We have procured an engineering firm for that. The engineering should proceed later this month through contract, and then those 4 projects will proceed to get obligated by the next obligation deadline of December of 2021.
So, who is in charge of that? I mean, once this left the county commission as far as like the ARPA getting that money towards it, like what, I mean, is this
The non-competitive,
is this something that the
Yes.
county, like you as the grant writer has been in charge of doing on behalf of all these water utilities in cities and county?
yes,
Or-
that's correct.
Okay,
Yeah, so the county is the grantee for the non-competitive, so, and therefore all the contracts are run through the county.
okay. Commissioner Show.
Can I just ask a couple of questions to her directly as well? Just a couple, and you may not know them off the top of your head, but how many additional residential units above and beyond the existing support for the existing city of Portland and surrounding areas will this water line support?
How many
Yeah, do
additional-
you have an answer for that, Mayor?
If this project was to be
Come up here so we
completed
can
with those out of those lines, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can come up and say.
Our hope is that just like through the Portland area for ourselves, is to add to us another 2 MGD a day possibility coming up from the Gallatin up 31E, across Mount Vernon and coming our way. Of course, y'all know that
Explain 2 MGD.
2 million gallons a day extra, so we have a 3 million gallon a day water plant. We're the only utility not connected to water from the Cumberland. So we have a small stream called West Fort Straits Creek that we suffer drought with. And so we know that Portland's gonna have to purchase water from someone, and we've been trying to do that. We had a reservoir project where we expended all the money, we got the grant, and then the state changed their mind, removed our permit in 2005 after we done bought the land and did all the upgrades. They said that we would degrade high quality waters, and they didn't want to build a reservoir, so we're gonna have to purchase water going into the future. We already know that. We buy some already. We have a small contract with Westmoreland. They were very helpful during the freeze at Christmas because we have an old line, and so this grant will help us replace the lines that are aging. The one up 52 East is beyond its life. It's a 6-inch, it's older, it needs to be 12. The one up 31E going up through Castaic Springs is at 40 plus years old. They're beyond their life. And so it's not just about growth, it's about fixing these that leak.
No, I totally understand it, and of that part of it, I'm in complete support. Like I said, I'm not necessarily against this. I just I'm trying to get my head around upgrading these pipes, extending these pipelines. What is the total amount of additional residential units that you would expect this capability to be able to support? Because we're baking in growth. I mean, we gotta be honest
Well,
with
you're talking
ourselves.
about just going out into the future?
Going
Or
into
just-
the future.
There's nothing from an immediate standpoint for us. So, and this is Greg Sanford from OHM Engineering, he helped us, but Westport Strakes Creek for Portland, we have a firm yield of 2 MGD in drought conditions. That was the 07, 08 drought. That means that we're already 1 MGD short if we have a drought. We're short 1 million gallons with a drought situation. So technically, one of the 2 million gallons would only be used to supplement drought. We would only have another 1 million gallons available for use going into the future. But we have no light.
I'll interject real quick to help you understand where Commissioner Sheriff's probably coming from. I'll give you an example. The sewer line on Upper Station Camp Creek Road that was sold to the taxpayers as being for a school was not. It was for new development, because the size of that line, that gravity sewer, it was a strawman argument saying, it was called the Delphi technique, saying, hey, here's your option, and you just need to buy into it. But it was basically, you don't put a gravity sewer down the creek, you put it, down the road, you put it in the creek. They could have done a pressurized force main along the road that would have serviced the needs of that school and that school only, which would have been taxpayer funded, which was the request. What happened was they put a sewer line big enough that literally 71% of the capacity was for new development, all the way from Lower Station Camp, all the way to the Bridal House in Cottontown, for thousands of new homes, thousands. And only 29% of the capacity was actually for the school. So it was under the guise of, oh, it's for the children, and as the director said, we're against kids having flushing toilets. And so you can understand the concern. Yeah, they still don't have flushing toilets.
What they do is get pumped out.
But to give you an example is because, I'll just say this, I was on the Waterline Ad Hoc Committee that Mo Taylor started, and, Mo Taylor, if you want to talk about Mo, he ran on providing water lines to impoverished people in the northern end of the county. However, this was for low to moderate income requirements through the CBDG grants.
Right.
And it was a little bit at a time, and he was chiseling away, and these are for people who these aren't for people who just went out there and I'm gonna build a house and around. These are, for developers. This was people like Mr. Graves said, is that they've lost their drinking water. The well water has gone bad. There's been an earthquake underground that has poisoned and there's leakage into the well water. There are people, I have literally a citizen statement from a meeting in September 27, 2021, where a citizen made a comment that somebody was drinking, that they saw their neighbor brushing their teeth out of the creek. So, those are real things that are happening on the north end of the county.
It is that last CDBG grant that Portland partnered with Sumner County. We worked with Mr. Taylor. We identified it was Absner Branch Road. At one time, the county and the cities worked together. We had a list of multiple roads throughout the county that does not have one water line down them. Our last meeting where we put all the partners, we had Trousdale, Macon, Westmoreland. We met in Westmoreland. Mr. Taylor was with us, so we were talking. We all met there. We're trying to figure out how to get water and run lines. One of the last ad hocs that we were with Mr. Taylor, we're talking about the fact that if we got a grant to run a water line, we don't have the water to put in the line. For us, dense development only happens really in the city because that's where sewer is. We don't send sewer outside the city, so we're pretty strict on that. We try not to do that at all. There would be no mandatory taps at all on a water line from that standpoint. So for us, I can only speak for the city of Portland, it's drought management. We're kind of in a tough position. We put all of our eggs in a basket because we were given a permit. We went down that road and they got taken, and now we don't have many options. This is the last opportunity, I guess, we have from ARPA money through TDEC to maybe get a collaborative grant together if possible.
Well, you mentioned, talking with Commissioner Mo Taylor about, I saw where you had written that as well, about running the lines but having the water for it. You guys aren't providing water anyway, it'd be coming from Cumberland River through Gallatin or through the Steam. you know, in Bethpage utility district, because I think they have about 300 feet of river frontage, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Graves can correct me, but I think that's right from my notes last time. And so I guess I'm not understanding, like with Mo's goal of providing, you know, as you know, Mo was about controlling growth. And right now in Westmoreland, they're trying to annex 2 pieces of property. One, I think they did, to build like 1,200 homes in Westmoreland, you know, and that could easily over double the size of Westmoreland. But I just find it quite interesting, the timing of all that happened, knowing this is moving forward. So you can't, you know, there's a comment made that's saying that, you know, we have to prepare, part of this was admitted, that we're doing this to prepare for growth, and you can't stop growth. I mean, I disagree. You can stop growth, you can reverse it, you can speed it up. I mean, you can do, I mean, and I've said this from the floor of the commission before, you know, growth for the sake of growth is the ideology of the cancer cell. And so, you know, and when you speak, you know, Commissioner Hyde emailed the commission, you know, concerns about this grant document. I went through all 28 pages, and regionalization is a stepping stone to globalization. And people do not want globalization here in Sumner County. And I understand the definition was given from the county mayor of regionalization, meaning it's where just we in the county are working together because you're trying to leverage those dollars and for the economy of scale as far as doing things. But there's legitimate concerns and fears of, are we truly helping people who are impoverished in below the poverty line get drinking water, or are we basically using this money to fund development and expand and grow beyond what the citizens want? Because I mean, I'm telling you, the people in Westmoreland are picketing and out there, right? I mean, the city hall has been more full than it has been because they're annexing land and wanting to rezone, or they're trying to annex land, or they have rezone and build more development. And I know you guys are going that way. Gallatin, you hear me criticize Gallatin all the time, and Mo Taylor said before, Gallatin's killing us with their growth, and they are. With 11,000 residential units on the books to be built or to, you know, approved to be built, that's easily 20,000 people. That's your, so when you're talking about your water capacity decreases, it's because city councils, planning commissions, county commissions, they keep approving all these things beyond what the capacity is available. And so it's definitely a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And because when it comes to water lines, for this, people are fearful because you're going to inevitably have growth because you're doing this, even though you're trying to pump, solving a need of drought, being in compliance. You're trying to solve a need of people in these low, moderate income areas. I guess the question is that this is the first time the county commission has seen this. It's just like an email last week. And we're like, hey, the county's known about this for a year or at least a couple of months, and we're just like, we gotta make a decision now. We missed the grant.
Well,
and that upset a lot of people.
Well, and I apologize for that, but the non-competitive portion got released before. This is the competitive. They just came out with the guidelines.
In
so the last,
April or March, right?
Yeah,
April,
so
right.
then they sent out this large manual. We had to absorb what was going on. We only allowed $100 million for regionalization across the state of Tennessee with a $20 million cap per grant. For us, it's interconnectivity, and they refer to it as regionalization, but I go back just to the freeze. If it wasn't for Westmoreland helping us out, and they had to help Lafayette out, they sent some water that way. But the problem with the line sizes is you can only put so much water in that size line. So you can't increase the pumps to pump the water through it enough without busting the lines apart. So we've increased the pressures as much as we can to push the water when needed. But if we're 1 MGD short in drought, and I'll just carry you back to June of 2022, and so at that time last year, we were under a burn ban in the county and in many of our cities. We had a burn ban, so we didn't have much rain. So when we have a lack of rain, more people use water, of course, their yards, their cattle, or different things are needing water. Our production numbers go up in, like Portland, about 600,000 gallons extra because of those things. And so we've had rain this year, that's helped us out a little bit. We've also done a great job on water loss. We've been working on that. We've saved a few million gallons each month so far. So we're trying to be judicious with everything that's sent to us and trying to help it out, but we're just kind of in a tough spot and could use this water line to upsize, and these are aging. They're all aging out. So they're beyond the life, which would be helpful as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, that's right.
So I've got a question, I guess, for the city mayor of Portland. How many, since 2011, how many building permits has been issued in the city of Portland?
I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't have that number.
Several?
Well, I would assume, yes, sir. We grew, I can share this with you. We went back and looked at some of the numbers, so I don't have the numbers, I apologize. We grew at a smaller rate from 2010 to 2020, I believe, according to census, than we did from 2000 to 2010. So I know that in the last 10 years, the city of Portland grew right at 14%, which is below couple other communities, which was about the rate of the unincorporated part of the county.
Who supplies water to the industrial area in Robertson County, both inside the city limits of Portland?
That's city of Portland. So it's in the city limits of Portland.
So that's even more water that could be used for residents in a crucial matter than it would be for
It does,
industry.
that one industry out there supplies about 6,000 jobs for the area.
But they
All
don't-
those folks live in
But
Sumner
those people
County.
could have a clean shower to take too, while they're on their way to their job, couldn't they?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
All right, that's all I have for the mayor.
Mr. Schaefer?
That's just a comment. Like I said, I'm not necessarily against this, because I get it. There's no perfect solution to it. I just really wish that because the water is, this water is, flows throughout. It's not a microcosm, right? You're ultimately gonna get this through Gallatin. That's the way it's gonna route through, right? I think. So, I mean, at some point, water pressure will be reduced from them as well. So every city mayor, as we are in a rush to dump more 500-unit developments over and over and over, and I'm not necessarily picking on you, I just, it's unfortunate that we have to constantly play catch-up on everything from an exit to water.
Well,
At some point, I hope we learn some lessons here.
I'll
All
give
of us.
credit to the city of
We're not.
Gallatin. They have done their due diligence to go ahead and get their Army Corps and TDEC permits to expand withdrawals and expansion plants. So that was the option that we looked for that reason, because they were doing that. So we just need water. We gotta buy water from somebody. But we gotta have the lines big enough to transport that amount of water to come to us. So that's what we're doing.
Mr. Chairman, I know it's out of the ordinary, but could I say a couple of
Yeah,
things?
Mr. Graves represents the Castaic and Bethpage Water Utility District.
The utility district, I'll speak for Castaic Bethpage right now. Of course, we buy our own water from Gallatin. We got a place, but we don't have a source or a water treatment plant to the Cumberland River. We've done studies on it. If we'd have done it about 10 years ago, we could have done it. But now, the cost of things have got so high that it's not gonna be feasible. The only way possible would be feasible if Westmoreland, Portland, and us went in and built it together. But there's so much infrastructure had to be put in. This is from the city of Gallatin, work out some details with contracts and so forth like that. But it would give us ample water to supply the needs of today. And I can speak 20 years down the road, but right now, and Portland's got the same situation. In 5 years, we're gonna run out of water up on that Mount Vernon, Portland, Oak Grove area. We're gonna run out of water for the citizens. It's low enough now. I can't speak, the cities and the counties responsible, but we're responsible for the water. We don't have sewer either, by the way. We're in good shape right now after we build in a treatment for a while. But those people on the roads that we're not working, haven't been working on the last few years, was for people who didn't have water on their road, have that opportunity. Sure, it ain't financially feasible to put water lines on every road in the county. Just ain't. You may have 3 houses to acre. It's not feasible. But if something on this line, this regional plan that we came up with can be worked out, and we can get the grants and help from the city of Gallatin to do this, and y'all are holding the card right now, that we have to go through y'all to get the county to get a grant. We can't get a grant on our own.
Commissioner Rogers, you have?
So I guess kind of the same follow-up question, if you will, Mr. Graves. Does the county come to the CSB WD and ask for a letter of, the utility district able to provide water for that residence?
The county,
On
you
a-
say the county?
County Planning Commission, do they send you a
No,
request?
whoever the
The builder?
builder, homeowner, or in case 5-acre tracts, they don't come through y'all, they just come to us and they get a hydraulics letter to see if there's water at the road to provide.
And then, of course, then the utility district says, yeah, we can provide water.
If they do a hydraulic study and they get paid to put the lines in, whoever it is, if there is that possibility, if it's a subdivision.
So again, in 2011, how many of those letters have been written, do you think, roughly?
Don't know.
Knowing that there's an
I'd have to
infrastructure
guess.
issue.
Well, if they got hydraulics there, we have water to furnish them. Now, we got a moratorium up in the Oak Grove area also because of this issue. We didn't, like I said a while ago, 30 PSIs is not enough to put in one house. So we had to do that to wait till, did we get all this infrastructure in, coming out of the customer's pocket? You know, somebody on the river over at Cascade Springs, they probably don't really care, but they don't really want it because it's made me make their rates go up.
And that was my next point, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I know but it's just questions. So say we get these 4 new, I think it's 4 proposed water towers, and they're at 100 foot higher than what they was before. What happens to these 40-year-old water lines that's in the ground? They're gonna probably rupture, and then who's gonna pay that cost to repair
That's,
it?
the customers would really, we, as the cities or the utilities, we'll have to pay for, we do repairs. There was one, Sunday morning, and yeah, it was, main line busted, so the utility repairs those. And a thing, we've been working on water loss for 10 years or so, and finally, we're getting down, the state's gonna require you to stay around 35%. They're gonna come in and investigate you, I guess it'd be a good word to call, if you know, if you can't keep that water loss, and you don't have a water loss plan, and we do. And our water loss is running 25% now. It sounds like a lot, probably.
I've got an interesting idea that just popped into my head, because I don't want to, I don't know if we can do this, but I don't want to, ultimately I want to support this, because I don't want, I supported helping out one city, and I don't want to be inconsistent not to help out another one, but I do have, and I also don't want the citizens up there who are currently there to suffer for the poor planning and decision of those who came before us. But I do have a question. Is it possible to make this, our resolution here, contingent on an agreement with all of the city mayors across the county to submit to a county approval of any annexation of additional adjacent land?
Second.
All right, I think it's, let's do this. Let's help them out. We wanted to do this by state law. I'm wondering if we can do it as part of this. I don't know, Mr. Sittler, is that feasible?
You can contract just about anything, so I'm
So we
gonna
do
have to
that.
put some research into that.
So you're making an amendment.
I'm making an
Resolution
amendment. We would.
Contingent upon.
Contingent on
The county commission has approval authority for every city in the county.
every
on
city in the
any
county
annexation
for any
request.
annexation.
Second.
Yeah. Third.
Any discussion on that?
Call for the question.
Well, hold on. I do have,
Mary's had that.
and Commissioner Janata, real quick for me.
I represent Gallatin, and
Okay.
For those of you that live in District 9, and we have a huge 2 farms that are getting ready to be possibly annexed, which is gonna be probably over 1,200 homes in one area that's near the water plant. The water plant already has issues, and they can tell you anything they want, but they got all these big, up on 109 and 25, they got a huge development going in there, and they're just proud as peacocks to do all this stuff. But my problem is, if you're gonna suck my water down, because they already gave water to Facebook. So I believe these people need water, but you're right. There's got to be a moratorium on this development, because you're killing us. And you're killing the people in the areas. My water pressure goes down because you are, lapping up the money, to the developers. This is killing us. And I'm telling you, I've lived it. 34 years I've been living it. And you all are seeing it. Gallatin's killing us. And I don't trust anybody at the Gallatin government, because they're telling you one thing and they're doing the exact opposite. So be heeding that warning from me, because I see it and I'm fighting it every single week, trying to get them to understand this, and they're already under services. So if you're not in your service, if you can't provide services to your community, you shouldn't be annexing anything. So that's what I'm trying to help you understand, because we're fighting it bad out here. And Gallatin's gonna have to, other cities are gonna have to take one.
Thank you.
This is a guy.
Commissioner Klein?
Yeah, the city of Gallatin meetings have heard this plenty, but I don't think I've ever discussed this in the county. But I came from Southern California, and the greatest growth it ever saw. And I saw, as a builder and the son of a builder, I saw so many mistakes that Southern California made. Their water table went from, in some cases, 5 feet deep to 200 feet deep. The problem I'm seeing with this is, we're talking about a 16-inch main line coming up 31E, and at Mount Vernon, it's gonna split into 2 12s.
Mm-hmm.
What is the justification for that size? If we cannot continue to take the entire country in Sumner County in the greater Middle Tennessee area. We have to stop somewhere along the line. And the biggest problem is because the existing taxpayers are footing the bill once again. Every city in this county is able to charge impact fees and won't. The county is not able to charge impact fees and would love to. We have to build the schools. And now we're being asked to increase the water line for substantial growth. I would like to know what the actual size of piping would need to be up 31E, up through Bethpage and up all the way to Westmoreland. I'm hearing Westmoreland's providing everybody with water. Why would they need a new 12-inch line coming up? If there's a loss of 25%, as Mr. Graves is saying, okay, those leaks need to be fixed. But if we're talking about a 16-inch up 31E and we only need a 12, and I think a lot of 31E right now is 12. I know near Brandon Mill Road where I live it is. So going up through District 6 and District 5, I think we've got a 12. The problem is it's limited by a 6-inch meter over at Martin Lane. I think if we actually looked at this and said, okay, this is what we actually need to provide for the existing residents of Sumner County. And maybe we build in a little margin of error, not for something like Facebook, but maybe for a few more houses. We would probably get that $30 million, or did you say $30 million? We might get it down.
With the grant.
The grant is 20, but the total cost is 30.
We've committed to $1 million.
Well, what I'm saying is we may be able, and especially bring the cost down, especially if some of our cities would start implementing impact fees, which is their legal right to do. And so I'm just having a real problem with all of this. I think the people in Bethpage do need water, but that's a matter of pressure. That's not a question of volume, to my understanding. You could put pressure relief valves all through those main lines.
So many things.
I know it's.
I just wanted to know
Very
that,
fluid.
that this, a couple things about my motion here. One, it actually, as stated, require all of the city mayors in the county to agree to this, in order to accomplish it, in order to acquire these funds. I think that at the end of the day, the real problem strategically that we've got throughout Tennessee, but in Sumner County specifically, is that the county doesn't have any check on the annexation process. All of the rest of this is just hemming and hawing about getting around that problem. And so if we want to, as opposed to fighting over the 16 versus 12, what I'm proposing here is to grant this in order to help out this city, who we all agree needs it. But in doing so, ask all the leadership of all the cities around the county to come to the table, and let's have a real hard look at being equitable on who's sharing the expenses for all this growth, and bring us to the table, and to do that willingly. So I think this resolution solves your problem without having to get into the nitty gritty, because I think there probably is a timetable on it.
So, not all cities are included in this, so I guess that would be,
Hendersonville,
Hendersonville's
White
not,
House.
the White House.
And the Goodlettsville parks are not included.
Right. So not all cities are included in this, so that's, Hendersonville, White House, Phillipsville aren't included.
Why wouldn't they be?
Because they don't.
Because they're
need
not
it.
asking for it.
I mean, but we want this
White
across.
House has its own, Goodlettsville has its own, Hendersonville has its own.
Well,
Don't need.
we're getting rid of Forward Sumner, right? So the idea of getting rid of that is so that the whole idea of Forward Sumner was bringing all these county mayors and county bodies together to come together for the good of the county. I'm saying we have a trump card here. We have something one city wants. Let's have all the cities come together and say, hey, we want to help them out too. But and in order to do that, we'll give up a little bit of our unchecked autonomy.
Well, that's in your motion on the floor, but I do have a question. It brings me back to my sewer line discussion. So, you say you need water, as far as, there's a difference between needing water, there's several orders here, actually. I want to go back to, let's go back to what Mo Taylor's original goal was and why this got started. It was to supply water to people who had, not people who were building, it's people who actually built houses and lived in these areas with well water, their own water source, that basically through acts of God, in nature, and nothing for themselves, beknownst to themselves, their water sources have gone bad. And so, you have to ask yourself, well, what is the role of government in some instances? And part of it is obviously common defense. And part of it is, in some instances, is where you can leverage economies of scale to benefit the taxpaying citizens. I think we agree with that as far as overall government. But there's definitely a marked difference between Mo Taylor's original goal, and I've said this in budget, and I'll say it again. This $10 million for the ARPA water line, Mo did not like this plan because he knew it was for growth.
That's right.
And he told me, and he said this was a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And the budget chairman at the time, in our last ad hoc water line committee meeting we actually had, where that was discussed with the ARPA, and the budget chairman was like, well, we've got the votes for this anyway, and he was like, I probably violated sunshine laws. I mean, admitted it in a public meeting. And so, for this ARPA deal, and so this was all planned, but in my opinion, just to kind of ambush Mo a little bit. It was a political ploy, a tactic. It's kind of holding hostage based on needs versus what the cities are wanting, and we've not seen anything that says the cities aren't going to try to stop growing and use us as an opportunity to create more growth, which is going to basically at this point force the county to raise property taxes again to pay for more schools, which we don't have the money to do, and it's a problem. And well, that's why we all got elected, because people want us to control this growth, and so there's a legitimate need. So I guess I have a question on the size of this line, and you had shown me the map or requested the map earlier. When you're looking at a 16-inch and a 12-inch line, and you're replacing, 2-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch lines, like what is, if we're going to talk about servicing the needs of existing citizens versus servicing future growth, I want to know realistically I'd be willing to put money on it and say that 16 inches is not for existing citizens, it's for future growth. So I want to know what would satisfy the current requirements with zero growth and zero additions to the water lines that are being added in with no more new development. What is that number? Does anybody know that number of the size line?
Engineer should have.
Is there?
Well, I can ask Greg to come speak, we'll ask him what he thinks on this. I know that he can speak on the volume that was needed to send water in two different directions, 2 MG toward us. From that standpoint, what they need in that area, so Greg, whatever you can share.
Sure. So, Greg Sanford, I've done distribution hydraulic mowing for 20 years. I've spent most of my career getting water to people who don't have it in county areas. So this is familiar territory. In terms of the sizing, those are actually, by conventional standards, undersized what would typically be used, specifically because there's just not enough one to run. So those sizes.
What would be typical?
20, 24, because the velocities in the pipe. So typically, the higher the velocity, the higher the head requirement, the higher the energy cost, the more expensive it is to move water from A to B. So the velocities in these lines would be about 5 feet per second, which is pushing up a little. To your question, if we ran an 8, say to Portland, they would barely be able to get 1 MGD, which would basically mean they are at capacity with their existing source. They've got 3 that they can treat. In a drought, they've only got 2 as a source.
So would you say that
1
12 is that extra 10 is really what you need, and 12 is a little wiggle room?
12 is a little wiggle room. So Westmoreland has a 10-inch currently. So going back with the 10 would be in the county. Going with the 12, the 10 is a non-conventional diameter. So when you get construction pricing, sometimes it's more expensive than 12 because it's not produced as often as the rest of the diameters. So a 16 is the equivalent of 2 12s. So if we've got a 12, we need to get to Westmoreland, and a 12, hopefully we get to Portland. That's for those diameters. Again, that's screaming in terms of velocity.
So what's the PSI you're expecting this to be?
It depends on where you got. There's a lot of topology changes here. Obviously, if you're on the upstream side of the booster station going to Mount Vernon, it's pushing 260.
Okay, so you don't space them, so you're trying to maintain a 7 or something like that.
Well, again, we're in Tennessee. The topography, it could be 20 on this hill and 150 in the valley, and then 30 over here. It's just what it is. So you basically have to establish a grade line for what that is.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad I believe that based on what you're saying. If comparing to the sewer line discussion, is not fair. It'd be an apples to oranges comparison as far as like, if you're saying this is not capacity for new development, this is capacity to bring you up to where you're currently.
And again, if you're going to do something of this magnitude, which was the original intent of the funds to begin with, these ARPA funding was appropriated by Congress to fund infrastructure. And TDEC's vision is these regionalization projects where collaborative effort to really have a meaningful impact, generational impact is the word that they used, for the whole community. So this is the most we see is feasible with the funding that's available. And again, this is a competitive grant, so the 20 million that we're seeking, we have to apply for that. They may come back and say, we'll get you 10. Again, we will do as much as we can with what's available. But to make a project that gives the most impact, these are the diameters. Because again, we just did a recent project. The price difference between an 8 and a 12 was about 30% more expensive, but you get double the capacity. So you can see the economies of scale that you end up with by going to
Now, Portland's gonna have a lot of wiggle room because they'll have an excess of 1 million gallons per day. Because at their existing capacity, they need in drought 3 million.
and they're already.
And they lose 1 because of the drought, so they're 2, and they'll be adding 2 more, so that's 4 that they would have in drought.
Drought.
The three, they lose 1 during the drought.
Correct.
So they're 2, they're gonna get an additional 2, so they'll have 4 million, so they're gonna have a lot of growth room 25%.
A lot of open fields, and probably
That's-
52
The
west.
question you never answered was how many houses is one MGD of extra provide for? That's the original
We can
question.
stop that.
You know where that question?
Not thought ahead, I mean,
And we don't know how many permits or houses have been added on to these lines since 2011. Per the original question, we never got an answer to that question. Commissioner, if you could-
I was gonna say, citizen Laura Baker has some information. She has done some research on steel pipe and water capacity. If we could ask her to speak on that, would that be okay with you? Sure. If she
Maybe
was
fine with that. Okay.
It just,
Yeah.
Mr. Google, 8-inch pipe gives you 1,600 gallons per minute, or 2.3 million gallons per day. An 8-inch pipe will give you 2.3. It doesn't say what pressure this at, it's just one search. Whereas a 16-inch pipe will give you 8,000 gallons per minute, or 11.5 million gallons per day. It's 1,440 minutes in a day, 8,000 gallons per minute, 11.5 million gallons.
That's a lot
That
of
sounds like a
water.
lot more than what.
okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can I speak?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I do hydraulics for a living, so, at that flow rate, the head requirement to go 115,000 feet, which is how far it is to go from gallons to quarts limits, you would have to have probably 24 booster stations to get that kind of velocity. I mean, you'd probably be at, I don't know, 50 feet per second, so.
Is that because of skin friction?
Yes, friction in the pipe. I mean, it's kind of like saying, like, well, I can get 1,000 gallons a minute out of a garden hose. You know how silly that kind of is. Yeah, you could probably do it, but the head requirement would be so insane. Again, you have to pump it, pump it, pump it, pump it. It's not practical. Like I said, 5 feet per second is unconventional. Typical, you'd probably be in more 2-3 foot per second.
It's a general statement, there's lots of other variables.
Sure.
Yeah, we're trying to lift
well-
it 400 feet and pump it 23 miles. So again, it takes a lot of energy.
Question?
Call question.
Um,
Oh, there might have been one, but if Daryl's
Can I
got one.
just give one summary? Because we had mentioned the 19 million, and then it requires a match of 1 million. But we are expecting to use the full 9 million towards this application because it is a project cost of 30 million. So I just wanted to make that clear that it's the 19 million grant through the TDEC ARPA dollars. Then we plan to match it with the 9 million from the ARPA. There may potentially be an additional 2.5 million if budget approves that to move forward.
I wanted to, well, I might have an amendment to your amendment, and it's a question for legal. So, I know we could do a moratorium on building permits in the county. It's been stated from the floor previously by the county commissioner. So, I guess my question would be is, as part of contingent on this plan, do a moratorium on water line hookups for new development, any new, hookups for any new construction. Could we make it contingent for, I guess, a moratorium for X amount of years, where 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, you can't have any more new development tie into these lines if this truly is to service existing homes? So does that?
I'll just,
Well, I'm not saying to erase what you're saying, I'm just saying.
no,
add
I'll
to
say
it.
I'll add to it.
But I mean, it just seems if we're really talking about, that we're concerned about existing needs, and we're not talking about future growth, then I don't see how anybody would have a problem with doing a moratorium on any new access to these lines for X amount of years, to basically be taking advantage of this in order to grow, which a lot of people have trust issues about, and that's what we gotta, we have trust issues with that. So, I don't know what would be 5 years, 2 years, 5 years, 7
I'll
years.
change my amendment to keep everything I just said, and I'd add a moratorium for, specific to these, for new developments, those that have not already been approved, to tie into this for 5 years. Well, who, I don't know who had the second, but.
I made the motion, but you're changing it.
I'm changing it to
I had
add.
your second, so I agree to that. Well, for discussion, 5 years is too short, you want to do 7 years?
I think it's too short.
I think
Just for this, just that.
So,
I'd say
the discussion, they feel it's too short, on that, so I don't know if you guys have concern.
Can I weigh in just a little bit?
Yes, sir. And can you identify who you are?
David Lee, Mayor of Westmoreland.
Okay, Dave.
Go ahead. I've lived in Bethpage or Westmoreland all my life. And up until here just recently, nobody ever knew Westmoreland existed. Just now, we're starting to get a little growth that we desperately need. Something like this is gonna kill Westmoreland. I know there's some controversy. We've got 2 annexations on the table right now. I expect one of them to die. I expect one of them to pass.
Which one do you expect to pass?
The Creasy Farm.
Well, which, is that the 40 acres or the, for
That's
100?
400 acres.
So that's, you expect that one to pass?
I do.
And that's 1,100 homes you're proposing putting on that one?
Plus 100 acres of industrial park, plus retail. I expect the other one, which has got 45 acres, I expect that to fail. But putting killing growth in Westmoreland would be wrong for us, be wrong. This is the first time we've seen growth in all my life. I'm tired of eating just Mexican restaurants. We've got plenty of them.
Well, Mayor, respectfully, if I could push back just a little bit, I thought that's why people lived in Westmoreland, because they like the rural area and they like the country environment.
That's the ones out in the county, yes, and I agree with that. But the taxpayers, get ready, if we don't get something, the taxpayers, we're about to raise property tax just to keep qualified police officers and qualified workers.
Sure, and I'm glad you brought up property taxes, because if we put these water lines in, my gracious, if we could suspend the rules, I'd like to hear from the mayor due to his, county mayor due to his past experience. When you put a water line on some property, that appraisal value goes up, is that not correct?
That's right.
And then what happens to the people who are barely able to live there, who are barely able to pay for their land as it is, because we are the Achilles heel of the county, according to our previous mayor of the county, that can barely afford to live as it is, and now we're gonna put another tax burden on top of them because we're trying to give them water? I mean, we're on the double-edged sword here, but why are we, this body, having to take it on the foothills when the cities are still issuing building permits for the last 12 years, knowing there's a problem? I ran my campaign based on fire hydrants, and nobody reached out to Darrell until they wanted something, and now they want water. I raised my voice, I said my point, I made my point clear that we need fire hydrants. A certain municipality in this county kept issuing fire hydrants. And the audacity of the leadership of that county made it a point to support my opponent and was very public about it. And now here they are calling me, asking me to do them a favor. First of all, that's a double standard in my book, but anyway, well, I'm just saying, it's funny how things work in this county, and the more I learn about it, the more shady it gets. So if we're really talking about taxes, wanting to eat at Mexican restaurants and all that stuff in the city, all due respect, sir, that's the city's responsibility, not the taxpaying citizens of the county.
But the citizens also pay city taxes and they also pay county taxes.
Well, and respectfully, I understand that, and I'm not, Mr. Chairman, I'm not gonna go into a debate, but, it's kinda like when you move into the city, you know your water bill's gonna be a little cheap, or a little higher, or a little cheaper, because you're gonna get a tax for your trash pickup and your sewage. I know I have to pay a trash man living in the county, and my water rate's a little higher, because I'm outside that incorporated city limits. So it's a trade-off. It's one for the other. But I've said it, and I'll say it until I'm run out of office or thrown out of office or voted out of office. I think the government is doing an injustice for the homeowners by not making sure that homeowner's house is protected, either by a fire hydrant or a water line. Now, here we go. The leadership of these cities in this county is writing letters every day. Yep, we've got water. We've got water. Yep, keep coming. How are we looking at county? Keep coming. That's the real problem. It's the love of money is the root of the evil. That's the real problem. It's not that we care about kids are dirty or drinking out of a pond. It's that love of money and the rooftops for a census. If you follow Highway 31, it's not too far of a reach for Gallatin to come in there, and they can get a new Costco on that end of town, or we can get a new Jonathan's on that end of town. Portland has died for years wanting better restaurants and newer restaurants. Well, if we can get rooftops today, but I bet Saturday when the roof was falling out, the sky was falling and 5 inches of rain fell, they was worried about impervious surfaces within the city limits of Portland because it was flooded. So it's kind of a, where do you go? But the problem is the city's poor planning is coming to the county saying, hey, we got our purse open, can you fill this up? Hey, we've been issuing building permits for 12 years, knowing there's a problem.
Well, I don't think we're poorly planning this. This is like a 20-year plan up there. We've probably got enough water supply, most of it right now.
This has to be done by 2026 is what I was told, so it's 2 years, Chicken Little sky's falling. We've got to do it right now.
I was talking about my planning the building stuff. This is a long-range plan.
Correct, well, I'll
This was not.
bring this in a little bit. I mean, you did bring up the fact that you want more restaurants, and it's not the job of the county citizens to bring more restaurants to Westmoreland. But I'm just telling you, the common misnomer that city councils say is, we need more rooftops. Well, more rooftops does not equate to financial prosperity for any municipality. It is, if you look at the cost of community services surveys throughout the nation, every time you build more residential roofs and residential units, it's a negative drain on the city and the county finances. Every time. You're never gonna you will lose money the more houses you put. That's how the math works, I'm sorry. And the only thing that does bring in is definitely industrial, commercial. That's only, and agricultural is the only thing that's a positive on the tax base. And so when you look at cost of community services, for every residential home built, average across the United States, it costs between $1.16 and $1.20 in tax. When you get $1 in tax revenue, you're spending up to $1.20 in services for that home. Every home you build, you lose money. And so you have to look at that. And so if our goal is to service existing, if our goal is truly to live in the spirit of what Mo Taylor, and he would be against all that growth in Westmoreland, he would not be for that annexation for residential housing.
I think you're wrong. I think he would be.
I think I know the heart of Mo more than most people here, so I'll have to disagree with that one. But Mo Taylor spoke out against residential growth more than anybody else in this county outside of me, because of the fact of what Commissioner Klein said earlier, that we don't have a way to pay for growth in the county. Right. So when you're talking about adding 1,100 homes, it could be 2,000 to 3,000 kids. We're talking about we got to raise taxes to build another school in Westmoreland. We're not in a position to do that, and we're not okay with doing that. And so I love the fact that looking towards growth or industrial growth, I think is great and a great idea. My motion was for a moratorium on residential growth, and I'm not changing that. And so it has nothing to do with industrial complexes or retail or anything else. I'm talking about residential. If we're truly talking about servicing the needs, and we're being honest here and not being shady, we're talking about servicing the needs of existing people in the county, not inviting more people to overload our systems and then telling their neighbors, we're going to raise your taxes because we can't afford it anymore. People are tired of that crap. They're tired of it. It's been happening. So, Commissioner Sho.
I just have a couple comments, and you hit on one of them. I'm not necessarily saying, I come from a little bit different. I come from an area that did in fact shrink economically, and so I don't think it's a wise idea to shrink or to kill all growth. But it's if it goes out of control, you have kind of scenarios that look like Madison, which we don't want. And I'm only noting that it's not fair that when a city says we're going to grow and we're going to annex 50 acres and put 1,100 units on it, you have control over it, the developers and the folks who own that have control over it, but we're the folks. I'm down in Hendersonville. We have to pony up additional taxes for schools, sheriff's services, roads, ingress and egress, and we have zero say. I'm not even saying necessarily that I would be, I would look at I personally would look at the particulars of every single development that would come through, and the moratorium is on new, so I think that 1,100 one would be okay in this particular instance. I would look at each one individually when it came to annexation. I'm only saying that the county deserves a vested interest in this process, because we're on the hook for it too financially. In no other arrangement does everybody else get to make decisions based on the financial impact for them. But one entity that has a financial impact to them, to themselves, has zero say. It's not fair. It's not a fair part of the way state law is written. We tried to get that done with this last session. It didn't get done. I'm going to try again. I'm going to work with our state reps again next session. But in the intermediary, hey, look, if we want to do this, let's let these cities come together and say, hey, we want to help, but we're willing to work with the county and bring them in as an interested party in these discussions, because we acknowledge that the county also bears a burden for the growth. It's just fair. That's my take. Not even that I would say no, just that we deserve to say. I hope that's fair.
You bring up a good point. It would not stop any plans that
Right.
cities like Westmoreland already have. It doesn't affect
That's
that.
right.
So it's
Doesn't
kind of
affect
a
it.
moot argument. But
That's
if we're
correct.
talking about future, if we're talking about controlling and being honest about who we're trying to help here. Are we trying to help people moving here, or because help developers make a profit off our backs? Because that's socialism. You socialize the cost. When you tell your neighbor you got to pay for this for something you don't want, that you don't agree to, but yet you got to pay for it. That's what socialism is. It's not capitalism. It's the exact opposite. Commissioner Klein, you're next.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that, in all respect to the Westmoreland mayor, that he doesn't need more housing to provide workers for that investment. I have a unique spot on Brandon Mill Road, just outside of Gallatin, where 24 years ago when I moved here, I never saw a car on 31. Now there's a parade of them heading towards Gallatin, Hendersonville, Madison, and a lot of them going to Nashville. Those people would rather work in Westmoreland if there were jobs available. You don't need to build houses. You've got a plentiful supply of workers in your area of Sumner County.
I will respectfully disagree with you.
Okay, well.
Commissioner Kitchener.
I gotta say, and I'll address you, Mr. Chairman, one more thing that's super important, and I've stated time and time again that the county government should not be in the business of owning property and using it for their benefit. But there's something that's going on that does not get talked about. And every time we had to raise taxes, I wish we didn't have any taxes, but the thing is every time this happens, we're reminded that the government actually owns your house. Because we can tax these poor widows and widowers out of a home that they have spent their whole life busting their tail to work for. And we can take it away from them because we're the big government. And we can raise those taxes. And we can have no care for those people. And I spoke to so many people in District 14 who have struggled with that. And they're on a fixed income. But you know what's not fixed? The tax burden, the tax rate. If we go out of control and we do it the wrong way, and we have uncontrolled residential growth, and then we don't make up for it in our commercial, in our industrial, and our agricultural growth, then we are literally going to kick out the people that have worked and spent and bought their houses paid in full all the time, and it makes me mad. And so I think that it goes back to just exactly what Commissioner Rogers says. We got to provide water, we got to provide fire hydrants, but we got to provide a way that people can stay in their houses when they work their whole time, living there, and they're living in that thing, and we can raise their taxes till we evict them. It's ridiculous that the government even has that control.
All right, so there's a
Mr. Chairman.
amendment on the table. If you make it quick, Mr. Graves.
Yeah, I'll make that quick. I think we're getting confused. I'm not, y'all got the vote, I don't have the vote. If we don't have water at the Castaigne Bethpage Water Department, and I'm sure that goes with the others, if we don't have that water there to give a subdivision that's been approved.
I'm going to stop you right there, Mr. Graves. It's a circuit we already established. That's not what we're talking about. So I'm going to just go ahead and
You're
move
trying
on.
to put on your motion.
Oh, yeah, I am, but it's not something that's already
If my kids want to
approved.
build a house, and in fact, 2 of them are, and probably the next 2 or 3 years, on my property, you're saying I won't be able to let them get a permit to build?
No, that's just tapping, we're talking about whatever this new system is. I mean, as far as like this new water line, new construction, new residential construction.
Well, you said you was gonna put
Moratorium.
stop moratorium on permits.
Moratorium, we can make an amendment, I mean, that for, developments by non-individual homeowners.
But this is not a development, I'm not killing the dead horse. This is not a development. I'll be cutting 2 lots for my kids. And one of my fellow commissioners on the water board here is doing the same thing. If you put a moratorium on houses, y'all, that means somebody, either the county or city has prevented them from building a house.
Commissioner
I wouldn't
Shepard.
only say that, I'd say that it's gonna make me keep my kids. I love my kids, but I'm gonna have to keep them 5 years longer.
Hold on. So we've got the floor here. Commissioner Shepard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple things here, So I'm happy, I understand this issue. So I mean, what we're really trying to, we're, at least the spirit of this is not about single individual homes. It's about development, large scale development. So I'm gonna make an amendment, to that. I'd like to change my amendment to be for development, any development by non-existing, property owners of more than two lots, more than 3 lots. That way individuals can, we want to give people the ability to subdivide. But I do want to say one other thing. We're in this, because one comment that was made here is like, well, we have all these approvals, well, why do we approve them? Why do we approve them if we don't have the water? I mean,
Great question.
You know what I mean?
Love of money. Part of this process this is a messy process because we just found out about this and we only have tonight to talk about it.
Yeah.
And we only have tonight for a solution for it.
So, yeah, that's right.
So
And
when
it's just like the sky's falling.
When you put us up against the wall, everything's an emergency. Everybody's got to be done now. There's an application deadline that we've been known about for 2-3 months, and we're just now getting it to talk about it, debate it. This is what happens. It's the free flow of ideas, and this is your government work, messy, like it or not. But so I don't. The spirit is of that, along with the annexation, is we want to make sure is to keep you guys honest who say you want to provide water for existing residents. We're keeping you honest, and this is the only way we know how to keep you honest. Because otherwise, you're lying to us.
Trust but verify.
Yeah, I mean, people lie all the time in county government, and city government. So this is. Do you have some address the moratorium or something different?
There's a question about the moratorium.
Okay.
It's kind of along the lines with the new amendment, but is this for a future single use or dual lots or only existing?
If an individual homeowner wants to subdivide their, I don't know exactly how to get this verbiage, because again, this is sprung on us. But if an individual homeowner wants to subdivide their lot so that their kid can have 4 acres and run a tap to it, no issue with that. I don't think any of us have any issue with that. We have an issue with 40 acres and 1,100 units. That's what, we don't want to be getting in the way of individuals.
We can get around the zoning restrictions and laws on that, but that's the nature of my question, is making sure that allowed for things like what he's wanting to do.
I don't know how to, I'm trying to come up with the language to make this work, but we can.
Well, here's the thing. We can add this if we want to pass this, and it can be amended from the floor next week.
Yeah,
We realize if you can't do it, but we don't know. I mean, it's just like we're having to make decisions based on knowing that we can adjust. I mean, we can adjust next week.
But the idea here, and I'll work with Mr. Sittler on getting the language exact for the commission, for the full commission, but it will be one to require that each of the mayors will agree that the county is a vested interest and can override with a simple majority vote annexation throughout the county, and 2,
you want all city mayors.
All city mayors.
Not anybody just because
That's
of water.
right.
That can't happen. There's no consideration for White House or Hendersonville. There's no way.
Sure there is. We have vested interest because they're paying
Yeah.
They're paying taxes down there.
I don't disagree with that, but you're asking them to acquiesce authority to do something they don't have to do.
Well, I think he's
The
trying to say they don't have to.
consideration with these entities is that they're all part of this mutual concern to get this pipe through.
Well, I mean, so there's nothing that says that they don't have to acquiesce.
I understand that.
But
They
I'm saying
don't.
we're asking them to do so in order to look out for their fellow
But this-
mayor.
the
their fellow
entities that
city.
are referenced as part of this, this grant,
Are you
they
saying
can be
because-
marshaled together because the grant is what's driving all this. White House and Hendersonville aren't a part of this. They're not receiving any benefit.
Well, I get it's
That's
not in
where-
their, I get it's not in their self-interest, but like,
That's
you
his
know.
point.
but-
I know that,
and that's the only
that's
thing
gonna
I
drive
wanna
it.
make
You may look at it
clear.
as being selfish, but that's,
I mean,
that right there is, you know.
Yeah, there's no way that, there's just. no
well,
way
I mean, look,
it's shooting
So
them in
you're
the
telling
foot.
me we can't, you're saying that we can't have all the other, we could only require the White House and
People that
Westmoreland.
are a part of this, that
Well,
are
then I mean,
receiving
if
some
that's the
benefit.
best we can get, then I'll go with that.
Well, and I just want to be clear because I knew you were adamant it'd be everybody.
I'd rather it be everybody. If that's the best we can get, I'll go with that.
So you're adjusting your amendment, because I was your seconder.
Yep.
Is to basically the cities that are involved with this agreement, that unless if the city mayors don't agree to the fact that the county would get to decide and have a vote and a voice on the annexation.
That's right.
If they don't agree to that, then this would fail.
That's right. It's contingent
It's
on that.
contingent on
It's
It
that.
contingent on
would
that
need to be
agreement.
some sort of interlocal agreement where it's voted
Right.
on by the city.
Probably has
It's
to go
not
there-
just the
there-
mayor stepping up.
Probably has to go to the legislative body too.
Yeah,
I mean, they got some time.
just to be
So-
clear.
Mr. Chairman, we won't get it back till October then.
No.
The grant has to be by May, it has the deadline's August 8th.
So you got some work to do.
We don't meet again until August, our council meeting's tonight, so I thought
Special
the
call.
chair's doing it, and I came in here, but we have to find out the TCA on the planning commission versus the council. I don't know what the law is on that, the ability to that, and I wouldn't want Gallatin, they're not getting any money, they're supplying the water. They were kind enough to say, hey, we're already spending money to expand our plant. I hate for them to be.
They're a party to it.
I mean, you can always do a special call.
Not to us.
With all due respect, but go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I need a verification because there was a meeting at least a year and a half ago that I went to where it was specifically talking about this system, and it was my understanding that the entire county would be looped together. If it is looped together, then everybody is benefiting from it.
If that's true, yeah.
If that's true.
Is that true that the entire county is looped into this?
Never looked.
So there is, the White House is completely isolated from everything else.
I don't know that.
That could be.
Well, they do connect.
But they're not.
Okay,
Portland currently purchases water from White House, but they're not part of what's presented.
but they will benefit from what is being presented tonight.
No, we won't be sending White House water, we don't send
So
Hendersonville water,
it's
we don't send
definitely
Gallatin.
not a looped system.
In fact,
White House is
can
on-
lose money.
I think the confusion is the difference between interconnectivity and being looped. So when we loop water lines, that means it's a continual flow of water within our system. But interconnectivity, there's valves and meters in place when we need to draw water from them. We only draw water from White House Utility District when needed. We don't sell them water. They don't need our water because we don't have it. It's just an emergency we can buy from them, but White House Utility District's not the city of White House. The city of White House gets all their water from White House Utility District.
Okay. Perhaps there should be language that says if any city benefits from this system.
Yes.
Well, I think what, Mr.
Go
Chairman,
ahead.
I think what Mr. Sittler's saying is that per the parameters of this, because that's where I was going to, but per the parameters of this grant mechanism, unless they are specifically mentioned, that we can't do that. So if that's the case, I would love to do that, but I want to make sure we're in line and going to do something that will actually pass muster. And so look, if we can get Westmoreland, Portland, and Gallatin, I think those are the three that are mentioned here, all on board with this, then I think that's a win, even if it's an imperfect win.
Castaic Springs, Beth Page Water Utility
Yeah.
District.
So any that are mentioned. and a 5-year moratorium, and I'll get the verbiage on this exact, but a 5-year moratorium on true third-party developments, carving out individual, individual subdivision.
Yeah, we're not
by
trying to
existing
penalize
owner.
homeowners for having their kids build a house on land. I love that.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll
we're
get
trying
the language right.
The goal is to help
That's
people.
what's on,
So-
that's what's on the board.
But the goal is to help people get water and not brushing their teeth out of the creek. That's the goal here, with being honest. And so, I think this is a win-win. I mean, I love the fact that we can do something, but again, we're gonna keep you cities honest because because the county doesn't have a seat at the table for anything, and we're paying for it. And that's, the citizens are tired of it. So, that's your motion.
And you had the second.
I had a second.
Just one quick question for clarification. I know it was kind of said by Commissioner Klein, but if there, and I'm asking, can I ask
Yeah.
either, both of y'all kind of, if there's any opportunity for in the future, something that's not worded here that gets squirmy and overshadowed by like lost papers kind of thing, and it winds its way going toward developments in cities that are not mentioned. Like, I know that's crazy, but
No, it's not crazy.
things have happened. And so if this could go anywhere else, if it could be redirected, if it could be reutilized or repurposed or whatever, I would like to include it in that, what you're saying, where that if anyone decides to tap into it, if it's just an act of God, they tap into it, that it has to go through the same process. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean that they had to do it to get the grant, but in order to use that in the future.
I would say you're controlling the situation anyway. You would make their connection contingent upon agreeing on that. So they don't even get the connection, but for the agreement.
Yeah. Yeah, because the reason why I'm saying this is because I can see like another city that would maybe not be included, that's maybe touching a city that would be, maybe works out some kind of an agreement to where that they annex part of the county. You know what I'm saying?
Water could go both ways.
It's the government, and we are not here to help. So just being very
We have
careful.
an amendment. I think it's the two parts, the annexation part and the moratorium part on whatever that looks like as far as like true new residential, high-density development is what the problem is. It's not, the problem is not people building wanting a house on an acre lot. That's not the problem. It's not. It's people wanting to build, 15 houses on a 1 acre lot. That's the problem. Yes. And that's what we're trying to control here. We're not trying to stop growth in that sense. We're just trying to control it. Like, listen, this would be a different conversation if the county could do an impact fee for capital needs for new school construction and growth, which we can't. Because then at that point, if somebody's paying for that growth, then who cares? If you want to screw your life up and your quality of life, that's on you in that area. You've paid for that school, and then have fun. And I mean, it's none of my business. But when I'm paying, the citizen, and paying to subsidize that growth against my will and against my wallet, that's where the problem is. That's where the pain is in Sumner County. And this is the only remedy we have right now. All in favor say aye to the amendment.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. And we will send that forward to the full commission with working through language, knowing that this can be amended and discussed on the floor if there's any issues. But hey, this is what happens when you actually debate things openly and in public and don't decide things behind the doors. And we're discussing things openly. It's a messy process.
And also when we get it in the midnight hour. I mean,
That's true. When you get things last minute, it's the best you can do.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, you need to pass this as amended.
So I'll make a motion to pass this as amendment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
There you go.
All right. Item E, sorry, we're going super late, but resolution for tourism
Motion
board.
approved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Resolution requesting the Tennessee General Assembly to address issues with Sumner County Election Commission.
I'm gonna make probably gonna fail, but I'm gonna make a motion out of abundance of caution. Specific.
Quiet, please. If you guys can keep it down, please.
Similar to my concern on existing lawsuits, and I changed nothing about my position on this, but out of an abundance of caution, I would move to defer this until resolution of the existing lawsuit. May not get a second, that's okay, just want to put that out there.
Oh.
It's a prudent thing to do.
We're
Are
on
we on the
item-
election commission or the tourism?
We just
board?
passed
tourism.
Oh.
Unanimous. Requesting Tennessee, the tourism, there's a motion to defer until after the lawsuit is settled. Is there a second? All right, I don't see that. Is there a motion to approve this? Motion by Commissioner Teacher, second by
Second.
Commissioner Brown. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Commissioner Show is opposed. All right. That finishes up new business, commission recognition, I so move.
Second.
Item A, second. Zoning, this is a, second reading for a, document, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry about that. Zoning Somerset Downs, this is just a second reading, moved to full commission on Monday night.
Move to adjourn.
Second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. 5 minutes and